Hello, everybody. My name is Jeremy McLean. I am the president of the Congregational Council. I would like to start with gratitudes, as I like to, thanking you for joining us, taking this time on a Sunday afternoon, particularly a big game day. I promise you that I'm very cognizant of the time. Also, a big thanks to the council members. We have a very active and engaged and thoughtful council. It's a pleasure working with them. This year we have 3 members who are leaving. Emma Gray, who has already gone off to college. Nadine Robinson is terming out, and Matthias Will. These have been very, very heartfelt, thoughtful members. We will miss them dearly. Also, the office staff. There's been a lot of leave taking. Ben Dingleson, who has quit being the director of operations in order to do full-time seminary work. And with that, I'd also like to welcome John Wright, who has been hired to take his place. Tonry Hughes, who has joined us this year doing administrative assistant stuff. Deidre Rettenmeyer, who is the events administrator, and Corey, who helps with all of the publications. The MLT Board of Trustees, led by Jerry Lundblatt, Jeff Kohler, the executive director, and Sandra Corcion, their administrative assistant. Yet another leave taking, for those who haven't heard, Ian O'Leary has moved on to a new job. And the office is now being managed by Sonia. Also extend gratitude to the ministry teams. If you've read my report already, you can see that it's our ministry teams that are really keeping St. Mark's in the community's eye, involved. I can't say enough for what the ministry teams have overcome in order to work together and to continue us doing God's work. Pastor Lyle, who graciously agreed to join us as our interim pastor and take us through this time of transition. And then in closing my list of gratitudes here, I'd like to acknowledge all of the family members who give up their time with their loved one in order for council members, ministry team members, so many people to do their work. As I like to say, they also serve those who wait. I understand that there's sometimes waiting in order to get your loved one's attention while they're doing St. Mark's work. So please, people, extend my thanks to your family members. And then a personal point of privilege, I'd like to thank Ed Chitty, not only for all the work that he does as sacristan, but also for everything that he picks up here at home that I just kind of let slide so I can do some of my St. Mark's stuff. So there's my thanks. I hope you have, if you haven't yet, you'll take the time to read my report. I'm going to let it stand as my remarks to the congregation. And in interest of time, I'm going to dive right into some logistics. For a Zoom meeting of this size, where there's 5-6 screens worth of people, it is much easier if somebody uses the raise hand feature in order to get my attention or whomever is speaking. You can find that if you're on a desktop or a laptop under reactions. Click on reactions and there's a button there to raise your hand. For those of you with a tablet or a smartphone, you'll find raise hand under the more button. So again, please use raise hand. What that does is it moves you on my screen to the very front so that I can see that you've raised your hand. With that, are there any questions regarding raising hand? It's a great opportunity to try it if you do. Seeing none, let's start in on how we're going to be voting. Those of you who attended the annual meeting last year, it's going to be identical, except for names have changed. Because we have more than one person sitting at a device, more than one voting member, we will go through an iterative process. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. So Corey, if you could put up the sample single choice first iteration.
There's the
okay. Okay, so there's the poll, and I would like everybody to pick what your favorite ice cream is.
Honey?
I'm sorry, does somebody have a question?
What's your favorite ice cream? Chocolate?
Yeah.
Could everybody mute, please?
It's so many times, I don't know how many times to tell you. This little red button.
Okay, it looks like we still have a few more votes coming in.
There. Oh.
Okay, so my apologies, I forgot to what will make this work is if within a household you identify who's going to vote first, who's going to vote second, who's going to vote third. So this would be the first person's opportunity to vote. Corey, could you close the poll, please? Okay, and then launch the second iteration. You know what? So this is when the second person sitting at the same device will, and you can see that there is an option at the bottom to tell you thus that everybody at the device has voted. So this is how we accommodate more than one person sitting at a device. And Corey Schoolender is serving as our audit committee. He will be tallying up the results of each iteration. Okay, it looks like we have 100% answered. In the poll, please, Corey. Okay, now if you would launch the first iteration of a multiple choice. And this time we're just doing 2 iterations. We may need to do more than 2 when we get to actual voting. So first person, tell us what Christmas carols you like. You can choose more than one.
I like that. These are all I
Okay, I see 100% answered. Close the poll, please, Corey. Renata, I see you have your hand up.
People voted.
We were just trying to figure out how to do it.
Oh, okay, okay,
You
cool enough.
explained it already.
Good enough. Okay, and now launch the second iteration for the multiple choice. And unfortunately, on my screen at least, everyone on this device has voted is down at the bottom. Okay, I only see 70% participation, but it doesn't seem like any more are coming in. I'll give another 5. This is the way that we will do it in the actual voting as well. If we see a lull, I'll make an announcement that we're going to keep the poll open for another 20 seconds, just in case people were otherwise distracted. Don't want to close a poll too early. Okay, Corey, if you could close that poll, please. Before I move on, are there any questions on how polling is going to work? Just a quick aside to the co-hosts. I was not able to vote, so we'll need to send our votes to Corey via chat. Diana, you have your hand raised?
Yes, the reason I'm raising my hand is because I just want you to know that Greg is with me on this screen. My screen says Diana, but it should say Diana and Greg.
Okay, thank you.
So there's one more person in attendance, I think, than originally thought.
Okay.
And we do have a separate poll, Jeremy, for number of voting members.
Yeah, I'm just getting ready to launch that. I wanted to acknowledge Diana first. Okay, so now we come to, if there are no questions on how the polling is going to work, the next one is critical because this will tell us how many times we need to iterate. So Corey, if you could launch the how many voting members on a device.
Jeremy, if we're not voting members, should we just abstain?
Yes. Okay. Oh, there's some more participation. Okay, poll is going to close in 15 seconds. If you've not voted yet, please do. Or not voted, but responded. Okay, Corey, close the poll, please. And I'm going to share the results just so people can see. So the majority is one people. We do have a couple, one family with three, so we will be making 3 iterations of each poll. Okay. So that is the end of my comments. I would now like to introduce Pastor Lyle Beckman for his comments.
Thank you, Jeremy. First, I want to say what a wonderful.
Pardon?
It's complicated, but it works.
Yeah.
It is.
Everybody mute, please. Everybody mute, please.
So first, I do want to thank you for the opportunity to serve you as your interim pastor. I really do feel honored to be here with you. And I've been listening. I hear you, and I hear residents of Martin Luther Towers often speak of the trials and challenges that you're facing in your own life, made even more dire because of pandemic and that sense of loss, and now changes in the church and changes in staffing at MLT, and an interim process that seems like it's going to last forever. Things are changing. There's a lot of ambiguity moving forward. And I know some of you are anxious about the time ahead. And I'll tell you what, I'm a little anxious, but only a little anxious. I have a 20-year history with St. Mark's, and as a member of St. Mark's and as your interim pastor, this is how I see things. So throughout our history as a congregation, and we have a long one, right? 170 some years of being a congregation of faithful people gathered together to do what God is calling them to do. We've come through some incredible challenges. So Cora was working with the confirmation class this morning, and we were talking about the fact that the congregation, St. Mark's, was founded in 1849. And the light bulb went off in a couple of their heads that said, oh my gosh, that was before the Civil War. So think about the turbulent times that the members and pastors of St. Mark's have faced together. The Civil War, the Great War, the Great Depression that followed the Great War, the pandemic that followed the Great War, World War II, and so on and so forth. We've been through a lot that the world has thrown our way. We've been through a lot that we have discovered among our leaders and within our congregation, and we've dealt with it all in a lovely and wonderful way that brings us to this place in our history 173 years later. This is the second thing that I'm thinking about these days, and that is how strong and stable a congregation St. Mark's is. I've done a few other interims, and I've talked with many people who have been an interim pastor in places that are not healthy. I think that St. Mark's is as strong and healthy, maybe even stronger and healthier than ever before. You've worked very well to position yourself into a place of strength. You have strong leaders. You have focused goals. You have active ministry teams. You have programs that support and serve our community. You have a facility that you've maintained, several facilities that you've maintained, a ministry structure that's in place and is poised to meet not only the needs of the congregation and the needs of our neighborhood now, but well into the future. And I have to say, you have a capable staff to assist you in that ministry. But most importantly, we can't forget that we are still and always have been rooted and grounded in God's word. We're fed and strengthened by God's gift to us, and we will continue our journey together in faith through this period and into the future, which is unknown. I'll talk a lot more about the interim process later when that time comes in the agenda, but mostly I just want to tell you how grateful and honored I am for this opportunity to be your interim pastor. Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor Lyle. Thanks to Brandon for calling attention that we had skipped the first two agenda items. I was working on my remarks and I just went right ahead with them. We have a consent agenda with two items on that agenda. The first is adopting a motion that the constitutional requirement for a voting member to have communed in the previous year will be excused for this annual meeting. This is something that very many Lutheran churches are doing during the pandemic when people are not either able or don't feel safe to come in to worship, that this requirement is being waived. The second item on the consent agenda is approval of the actual agenda. The agenda was included in the annual meeting documents that were sent out electronically yesterday. So if there are any objections to this consent agenda, this is your opportunity to speak up, either raise your hand or unmute and say something. Seeing no objections, the consent agenda is adopted. The second item, the next item on the agenda is reading the mission statement. I will go ahead and read it out loud. The rest of you are welcome to read to yourself as I read along. St. Mark's is a growing Christian community rooted in tradition and open to new expression. Responding to God's compassionate love, we reach out in service to the community and the world. With openness of heart and spirit, we welcome all. And as an aside, I would like to say I've been part of many mission statements. I think St. Mark's lives into this mission statement better than any organization that I've worked with. Okay, so now we are back to the discussion agenda. I've done my remarks, Pastor Lyle has done his, and we're ready for the Treasurer's Report on 2021. I'd like to introduce our Treasurer, Richard Bowles.
Thank you. Corey, can you put up the exhibits for me? Thank you.
For just one moment.
Sure. First, I wanted to thank everyone for their support and of the mission and ministries of St. Mark's. As you will see in a moment, our financial performance in 2021 was very good, again. And looking at our bank balances, they have increased to a combined $437,000. It's a combination of both the checking and restricted accounts. Last year, the combination of those two accounts was $315,000, quite a large increase. The increase of $85,000 that you see in the restricted fund includes a bequest of $51,000, which is a rather unique circumstance. And in addition, the endowment fund has gained approximately $52,000 during 2021, which is net of grant disbursements of $13,500. On the liability side, our Paycheck Protection Plan loan, which we received in 2020, was forgiven during 2021, so it's no longer on our balance sheet. The balances of the larger restricted funds are shown here. You can see the $51,000 bequest, which we received in December. And additionally, the Capital Reserve Fund has grown significantly. As a reminder, this fund covers costs associated with unanticipated building expenses. This year, we utilized the Capital Reserve Fund to pay for repairs to the water heater and boiler when they unexpectedly broke down. The Capital Reserve Fund also holds money in anticipation of unusual expenses that we expect to incur, namely the repointing of the exterior brickwork, which we know we need to do, and we expect to cost upwards of $1.2 million. Moving on to our income statement, so the next slide. Our actual income during 2021 was $207,000 more than budget. This does include the $95,900 of recognized income from the Paycheck Protection Plan loan, which was forgiven. It also includes the $111,000 of restricted income that we received this year. Again, that also includes the $51,000 bequest within that line item. Without the Paycheck Protection Plan loan and the restricted income, our income was about equal to budget. You can see that general envelope giving was less than anticipated, but was offset by higher building use income. Total expenses were below budget by about $16,000. Professional fees were higher than budget for two reasons. Firstly, we increased the level of audit review that BPM performs. in anticipation of needing reviewed financial statements as we work on the Roth's development. And secondly, we've outsourced our bookkeeping duties to our accountant, so that increased our professional fees, but it also lowered our staff salaries and benefits. Overall, this gives us a net operating income of $223 or $223,579. Without the two unique income flows from the Paycheck Protection Plan loan and that large bequest, our net operating income is still $76,000. I would like to pause at this point and take any questions about the financial experience from 2021 before we move on to the budget. And I'm not sure if I can see any questions, so perhaps.
Yeah. The floor is open for questions. Please raise your hand.
I don't see any on my end.
So I don't either.
Okay.
So let's go ahead with the budget.
Okay. Turning to the 2022 budget. For those of you who attended last week's adult forum, you will see a couple of small changes here. We've increased the general envelope giving to $475,000 to accommodate call committee expenses. As a note, the 2022 pledges to date are $462,000, so very close to what we're budgeting. For the first time, we are also budgeting for restricted giving this year, and we have a budget of $40,000 for restricted giving. This is based on the amounts we have received in the past couple of years, but it excludes some extraordinary donations, such as the bequest from last year. We do anticipate more building use income in 2022 as more musical groups and other organizations are able to return to in-person performance. On the expense side, the budgets submitted by the ministries are fully funded in this recommended budget. Some expense items of note are as follows. Within church property, we have included around $16,000 related to security, both for additional cameras and occasional extra personnel. We have included $9,000 for call committee expenses to interview pastoral candidates, and my thanks to Margaret McLean for pointing out the need for this. And then within staff salaries, we are including $20,000 for hiring 4 paid singers to augment the choir. While there is a lot of uncertainty around what 2022 holds for St. Mark's, we are in a good position now. This budget represents a reasonable estimate of income and expenses based on pledges and financial results, particularly the latter half of 2021. I look forward to putting this budget into action and pursuing our 2022 goals and ministries with the community of St. Mark's. Do we have any questions about the budget?
Yes, I see a question from Kent and Maria Jose.
That was by accident.
Oh, okay, no problem. Okay, so the floor is open for questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand using the reactions or the more button. Seeing no questions, I would like to call a motion to approve the budget. And this would be a motion from the floor, please.
So moved.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
can you identify? I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry. I should have mentioned before. And please say who you are when you move.
Marge Oakley, so moved.
Second, James
you.
Bridgman.
Thank you both. Okay. It has been moved and seconded. At this time, we have an opportunity for further questions or discussion. Hearing none, I would like to call the vote. Corey, could you please launch the first iteration for approving the budget? This would be the first person in the household that's using the same device. The others will have an opportunity after this one is closed. Okay, I see no further movement. The poll will close in 15 seconds. Okay, Corey, if you could close this poll, please. And start the second iteration. Fred, I see your hand raised.
Yes, there are two people here, my wife and myself, not one.
Right, right. So whoever voted the first time won't vote this time, and the second person votes on this iteration.
Sorry, I got it straight now. Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you for asking.
All right, here you go.
Yeah.
Okay, and I saw another hand raised, but maybe it was the same question. And again, for those who had voted at the first iteration, this would be where you select everyone on this device has voted. Okay, I see participation has stabilized. The poll will close in 15 seconds. Okay, Corey, if you could close this poll and start the third iteration, please. And this will give the family with 3 people on the device. And actually, if somebody missed their opportunity to vote, this is your opportunity as well. Okay, the last one does go fast. I see participation leveling off. The poll will close in 15 seconds. Okay, Corey, if you could close this poll, please. Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Corey, do you have results for us?
I don't have final numbers, but it was at least over 90% to pass. I will have final numbers in a minute or two.
Okay, thank you very much. We will circle back for the precise numbers after introducing the council members, or the nominees for council members. Pastor Lyle, you have the floor to introduce our nominees.
The nominating committee was Ardell Knudsen, Nadine Robinson, and myself. And we didn't have to work too hard to find someone willing to serve on council. In fact, we thought of several people, and we were fortunate enough to talk with both Alexander Stibor and Kenneth Martin, and they agreed. And we are delighted. And I know somewhere in your packet, you'll see their bios and their pictures. Both are active members of the congregation, which I think is a good thing for a council member. And maybe you know them already from seeing them in worship or being involved in property days or working at a hospitality event. Ken's wife, Lindsay, is our hospitality chair. And so often Ken is there helping her on Oktoberfest or Elizabeth Eckdale's farewell, for example. And Alexander, well, of course, we haven't seen Alexander now for a couple of weeks because he and his wife, Dorothea, are expecting a child in February and or March, somewhere in that period of time. So they're being safe and staying home, but they're both really eager to serve, well qualified, and they bring quite an interesting and diverse set of skills. So if I don't know if you'll see their bios on the screen, but Alexander is a quantum physicist and works as a project scientist at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And then, that I can't wait to have more conversations about that. And he studied in Germany, grew up in Austria, and as I say, he's, yes, there they are, eagerly awaiting the birth of their child. And then Ken is managing director at RBC Capital Markets in Technology Investment Banking Group. So again, brings some interesting skills to the church council, but they both bring a spirit and a sense of community already that they've experienced as members of St. Mark's, and they're both very eager to be on church council and share their gifts with the congregation.
Thank you, Pastor Lyle. And with that, we now also open the floor for nominations from the floor. If there is anybody who would like to make a nomination, I put floor in quotes there, of course, the Zoom floor. If you would like, please use raise hand to be acknowledged. Seeing no nominations from the floor, I would like to call the vote, please. Corey, if you could please launch the first iteration for candidates.
Jeremy, I just wanted to clarify, are there two openings?
Yes, there are.
Okay,
Actually,
thank
there's we are still actively searching for a replacement for Emma Gray as the youth representative. So this will be replacing Nadine Robinson and Matthias Will. Thank you, Gary. Okay, participation seems to have leveled off. The poll will close in 15 seconds. Okay, Corey, if you could close the poll, please, and launch the second iteration. Okay, this is where the second member sitting at the device will cast your vote, or you'll say that you've already voted. I see participation having leveled off. The poll will close in 15 seconds. Okay, Corey, if you could close this poll and start the third iteration, please. Okay, this is where most people will have already voted, but it is an opportunity for those who missed their chance the first couple of times. Okay, I see participation leveling off again. And as soon as I said that, a couple of people voted. The poll will close in 15 seconds. Okay, Corey, if you could close this iteration, please. Thank you. So we'll give Corey a few minutes to get the exact tallies on the council nominees. But Corey, do you have numbers for us on the budget vote, please?
Yes, I do. The final numbers on the budget vote are 68 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 2 abstentions.
Very good. Thank you, Corey.
I also have the council results as well.
I thought you might. Go ahead, please.
72 votes for Kenneth and 70 for Alexander.
Okay, excellent. So welcome aboard, Ken and Alexander. I promise you, you will have an interesting time.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
It's actually an exciting time to be on the council. Deacon Cora, I saw your hand raised. Was that a slip of the button?
Just an applause emoji.
Oh, that was applause. Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, then Pastor Lyle, you are up for the introduction of this year's annual goals.
Thank you, Jeremy. I love this part of the life at St. Mark's where you establish not only annual goals, but in the past you've had open questions And the open questions have been used to engage conversation in all the ministry teams and at adult forums. And I know that many of you have participated not only in creating goals, but in trying to figure out how we best apply those goals to the daily life of the congregation. And I believe you've done well. So we have annual goals for 2022 that we wish to put forward to you. And again, they came through a variety of ways that the church council looked at feedback that they were getting from ministry teams and other members of St. Mark's. And this is what they decided, that we would have 3 goals. Goal number 1, refine hybrid event technology to improve the remote and live participant experience, expand our reach, and promote inclusivity. So I think that St. Mark's does an admirable job at making worship available to anyone and everyone that wants to participate. So we provide in-person worship and we live stream. And it takes place because we have so many people involved in the process. I know nothing about any of that. And so I rely on people who know what they're doing. And so we have camera operators. We have Matt Chacon, who's our live stream manager. We have Corey. We have other people on council and other members of the congregation who just know when to step up and supply support. And I think we do well. But the question is, maybe could we do better? And could we be a little more engaging or a little more interesting, maybe is the word. Can we include more people? Can we, well, there's so many things for us to consider in this first goal, and that's why it's a goal. So refine hybrid technology to improve the remote and live participant experience, expand our reach, and promote inclusivity. And that's for worship, that's for meetings, that's for adult forums, that's for everything that we might be able to do together. Our second goal is that the congregation will actively seek to become anti-racist and welcoming to all through our public witness against racism, evaluation of St. Mark's policies and practices, and collaboration with outside groups in pursuit of social justice and racial equity. Sounds a little bit similar to one of last year's goals, but it is incredibly important that we lift this up yet again for 2022, because we feel like there is a lot more we can do and say with regards to this goal. So we'll be thinking about how we position St. Mark's and how visitors experience us and how we can continue to grow in our pursuit of social justice and racial equity. And then the third goal is for us to enhance the vibrancy of our church and congregational activities by identifying and implementing new opportunities to foster personal and group connections. So that came out of the idea that, or the reality of the fact that so many people at St. Mark's feel a little bit disconnected. And so how does a community of faith respond to that sense of being disconnected? So goal number 3, we're trying to find new ways to first identify who's feeling disconnected, and then figure out a way to get them more connected to the life of St. Mark's. And so those are our 3 goals. In 2021, we also had open questions. So you deliberately came up with 3 questions that you would ask yourself or all the ministry teams or all of the other organizations within St. Mark's. And they were good questions, and they led to some thoughtful response. Some of that thoughtful response you've seen in place in various parts of the way St. Mark's operates, or how we identify ourselves now, or how we do things. And so the question is, do we have open questions again? And the answer was no, not this year, because in this year, which will still be marked by this intentional interim experience, we'll have our own set of questions that the interim process is asking all of the ministry teams, all of the groups in St. Mark's. We'll ask it of the staff, we'll ask it of the confirmation class, we'll ask it of the choir. Any way that groups of people gather, we'll be asking. I'll be asking that question very shortly at MLT for some of the residents. But the questions are this, and you've heard me say them before, they shouldn't be a surprise, but overriding the whole intentional interim process are these three questions. Who are we as St. Mark's as we gather together? It's a little bit informed by our history. It's a lot informed about how we have positioned ourselves in terms of how we want people to see us and experience us. And it's a lot informed by what we hope to accomplish in the future. So who are we? What do we value? What can we not live without? And then the second question is, who are our neighbors? So the question is, well, how do we define neighbor? And that's been an age-old question, right? Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, who is your neighbor? Jesus was asked that question, and we're still asking that question. Mm-hmm. So for St. Mark's, the answer could be, we look at our immediate neighborhood around our buildings, and that could define neighborhood. So, but even, isn't that an interesting question? Who are our neighbors? Even if that's the way we think. Our neighbors could be in the Tenderloin, they could be in the Western Addition, they could be in Cathedral Hill, they could be in Lower Pacific Heights, they could be in Japantown, they could be in all the neighborhoods around the church or within walking distance to the church. Do we think just San Francisco? Do we think Bay Area? Do we think globally? And so it's not an easy question. And the answer is probably as varied as all those simple answers that I just suggested. So when we talk sanctuary congregation, we have more of a global answer. When we talk sister congregation with Cordero de Dios, we think globally. When we talk about the food pantry that we participate in, the Interfaith Food Pantry every week, and the winter shelter, we're thinking much more locally. But you can see there are wide varieties of answers that we'll come up with when we ask that second question, who are our neighbors? And then the third big question for us to consider as we move forward in this interim process, but it's the same question that congregations have asked themselves since their beginnings, and to what is God calling us? So given who we are, given our resources, given the congregation as we are right now, what is our future? So is God calling us to be exactly the same in the next 10 years as we were in the last 10 years? Or is God challenging us to think differently about some things? What do we lift up and hold that we won't change because we just are stuck? Or what are we willing to let go because God is either thawing our hearts or inspiring us with the fire of the Holy Spirit to do something new? So again, those questions will be asked as often as we can ask them to whatever group of people want to gather and answer those questions. So, and we'll have several adult forums because we want the whole congregation to be engaged in these questions. We'll have adult forums, we'll have we'll have Zoom meetings because some people might not be able to come to some of our adult forums, like the choir who's singing while we have adult forums. So maybe we'll do a separate thing just for them and invite everybody else. We'll have surveys. We'll have other information that we'll distribute to the congregation in the course of the year. So our 3 goals for the whole year, and those very interesting reflection questions that you'll be answering primarily through the first part of the intentional interim process. And I'll tell you more about that as we move along. Any questions about the goals or the process?
This is your opportunity to raise your hand.
Again,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, these are not my goals. These are our goals. A lot of people have given input, participated in a process that brought these goals to the congregation. So it is a collective response to a conversation that has been going on for, well, years really at St. Mark's, and specifically months to prepare these goals. I just wanted you to understand that it has been a process and will continue to be a process.
Okay, thank you, Pastor Lyle, and thank you to the Open Question and Goals team for this year. Laura Evanson, Diana Gomez, Brandon Battaglia, and Kate Robb. If there are no further questions on the open goal, or the goals rather, then I would like to introduce Jerry Lundblad, who is president of the MLT Board of Trustees. Jerry, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Jeremy. My report's brief. Jeff is going to be talking about the new development, which is very exciting for the ministry of St. Mark's Lutheran Church. Just a couple of things I want to mention. The Urban Life Center is fully leased with our community of nonprofits that extends the ministry of St. Mark's Lutheran Church. We've had a couple of adult forums from those groups, so you can feel the excitement over there. It's every day. It's providing ministry to the San Francisco community. The other point is that our landscape project, I think, has brought a sense of community to the square. It's welcoming, it's comfortable, and it's safe. So we're quite proud of that. I would like to big thank you to our board. Barbara Ingman and John Moeller have been on a very long runway to achieve our development project. I can't tell you how important that has been to have those dedicated people. Barbara Bach and Joe Chadwick, residents of the tower, have allowed us to have a close connection with the residents of the tower, which is important. Our vice president, Scott Taylor, and Shannon Chung. Scott does the heavy lifting with the accounting and finance. Shannon has done the heavy lifting with our resident services committee during these very difficult times. And Susie Smith has stepped up as our new secretary of the board. And I can't tell you how important it is that our rookie showed up. The rookie board member, Lyle Beckman, first one to join, last one to join. His devotion to St. Mark's and Martin Luther Square is unparalleled. So everything's good. So with that, Jeremy, I'll take questions, or else we can pass it on to Jeff and talk about the new development.
The floor is open for questions. Seeing none, then I would like to introduce Jeff Kohler, the Executive Director for MLT, and talk about an exciting new developments with the Ella Rolf's place. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Good to see you. Hey, Corey, are you going to share the screen, the presentation on the screen? Okay. So what I'm going to share with you today is, now that we received the large grant from the Ella Roth's Foundation last year, that's allowed us to really engage in a whole new way with our architects. And so what we have been putting together is what's called kind of an initial design concept package. So this is going to look fairly familiar with what you've seen, except some of the details are going to be more accurate and really represent what Ella Roth's place is going to look more and more like. And it's this design packages gives us the ability to share with you as the congregation, like what we're currently thinking about, but none of this is set in stone yet. So we're extremely interested in hearing your feedback. But what this package is really meant to do is we're able to sit down with the planning department at the city and to get their feedback before we spend any money on drawings that they're not going to approve. But we'll find out what they like, what they don't, what their suggestions are. So this is all a big intake period. So I just want to walk y'all through some of the slides out of that package. So what you're seeing here, of course, is a square where you see the church, the existing Ella Roth's tower, and kind of how Ella Roth's place would situate on the square. We can go to the next slide, Corey. So as we're doing this design concept package, one of the things we look is at what is the current footprint of the square on the left-hand side and what are the immediate neighboring buildings. So when we're looking at how the building looks and sort of the exterior treatments on it, we're trying to bear in mind the historical nature of the church, 1960s architecture of MLT. And we are looking at the Urban Life Center, although we all hope that that's a future development. We can go to the next slide. So this is going to give you a snapshot of, now you're looking at the footprint or the square on the left-hand side, and it just shows you the layout of what the building looks like from an aerial. Up at the upper top right, shows you that we're still looking at 94 units. 19 of them would be studios, 75 would be one bedrooms. And then you get a nice side profile of the church building and Ella Roth's, a little bit more what you would see from the square. You can go to the next slide. So this is a slide where we're really looking at the exterior treatments of the building. And I'll really draw your attention to the bottom right-hand corner where you see the red brick. And what we're really trying to bear and keep in mind here is how all of this relates to the church as the anchor to St. Mark's Square. So if you look at the picture, you're going to see these sort of red bands running down vertically on the left-hand side of Ella Roth's place. And then if you look at sort of the street level, you'll see some more of that treatment down below. It's so that we're pulling in some of that same red brick, most likely like a veneer on Ella Roth's place, but you can see the church tower behind it. So really just trying to pay a lot of attention to not just building a building, but how it fits into St. Mark's Square and kind of the history that's made this possible. We can go to the next slide. And this is just a better close shot where you can see the red brick even wraps around on the side that would still look into the courtyard and how it relates to the church. The whole idea, and this is where I say we're beginning to start to approach the eventual campus feel of the square, where if you see St. Mark's and then you see Ella Roth's place or the MLT Senior, we want people to really realize this is all one community. And that's the idea behind this kind of design concept. And then you can go to the last slide, Corey. And this is just a little bit more of a street level view where you can see that, these view corridors in between the buildings where we're trying to make sure people can still see the tower as they're walking by And this is a little bit closer picture of, the building and kind of the size and shape of it. Anyway, that's the last slide. It's a little bit of a status update of just, since we did the adult forum, we are moving forward with these. We're starting our design meetings with the city. Once we get feedback from the city, we'll kind of incorporate anything significant that they do. We will come back and do another adult forum with a congregation, which is where we would start getting more of your feedback and incorporating any of that into the final design. So there'll be some adult forum and opportunities for people to give their feedback. And I want to stress there, we'll have another kind of meeting like that, but with the residents of the senior building, so they can have their input, as well as community members and neighbors, around the area. And then just for the timing really hasn't shifted. So you can imagine working with a city, this takes quite a while to do these designs, get community feedback. Groundbreaking will still happen sometime later in 2023, and with an eventual opening of the building probably in late 2025. So all of that has roughly stayed the same. It's subject to change, but generally we're on track with what we thought before. So anyway, that's really it. So I'll just see if anybody has questions.
The floor is open for questions.
Hey, I saw, so Marge had a question on just the quick history of Ella Roth. So she was the daughter of a really prominent San Franciscan 1800s. He actually did a big salmon fishing. I've been learning more about this myself. Like company back in, they used to have Ella's parents had a mansion down on Lombard Street. So Ella lived there the rest of her life, but she was a Lutheran. And then when she passed away, her pastor followed her bequest, but it was really, she wanted to leave the mansion for the use of seniors that were low income. I'm using today's words to describe it. But what happened was they sold the mansion because it wasn't really conducive for seniors on mobility issues, took that money and created a foundation in her name. Since then, that foundation has probably developed and built almost 900 units of affordable housing around the Bay Area. A big chunk of it's up in Napa. But the foundation that's there, they're going to sunset that foundation. So they wanted to find a way to honor her legacy towards affordable housing, specifically towards seniors. And that's why we're naming the building after her, Ella Roth's place. And just March, just so you know, and everyone, so I would say in about 2-3 months, we're going to be launching our website just to be able to share with the community what we are doing at St. Mark Square. And it'll have a lot more history about Ella Roth included in it.
Renata, I see your hand raised.
Actually, it's Jim.
Okay, Jim.
And I'm going to video too. Aren't I beautiful? Yes.
Yay.
Hey, Jim.
I'm
So that for you, those of you that don't know it, I'm an attorney. So it raises the issue in my mind of what the legal structure will be. Is this going to be a separate charitable corporation? Or is it going to be connected to this foundation you're talking about? Do you have any idea on what you want to do there?
Yeah, I do. It's the exact same type of partnership that we have with the MLT senior building. So actually the foundation is granting the money to MLT Inc. Then MLT Inc. makes that investment into this partnership. Martin Luther Tower Inc. continues to be the managing general partner, just like we are today on the senior building. And then our development partner will be our administrative managing general partner on that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and it makes me a little uncomfortable. I think you really need to think very hard about the legal structure here, because what impacts over the new development could impact Martin Luther Towers if Martin Luther Towers is basically owning the new project. So then you really think hard about that.
Right. So there's a little bit of, so there's Martin Luther Tower Inc. That's the nonprofit. And then a separate partnership, there's Martin Luther Tower LP. That's what the senior building is. And hey, Jim, you can see it quickly. It's a great question. Some that the executive committee of MLT spent a lot of time on and what we're going through right now. So we would love to take you through more of this. You can really feel more comfortable with the details, but we are following the same structure that MLT senior has been in, probably for some of the reasons that you're raising, is to really respect this long-term history and continuing that into the future. And because we don't want to put any of it at risk.
Yes, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah, I'd love to take you through it though.
Thank you.
Sure. And hey, I did see a question from Brandy. So the definition of affordable is pretty wide range in California. It can mean anything from rents are serving the community that make 25% of the area median income and lower, all the way to 140%. And so you guys, just roughly speaking, an area median income is probably around $75,000 or $80,000. So you just take either 25% of that to 140%. That's really affordable. It's really a broad definition. We don't know what the monthly rent per unit will be. What we are targeting is for it to serve the most vulnerable population as possible. But I would say right now we hope to have some that serve 30% of the income, some 40%. But no matter what, the building will average out around serving the community that makes 60% of that area median income and below. But we don't have the exact rent just yet. That sort of comes out after time and is a function of how much the building costs and how much equity we can raise through tax credits. But more to come on that. You will learn more and more about that as we go along.
Any further questions regarding the L. Roth's place? With that, then, thank you, Jeff, for your time and the presentation and for the years and years of work going into this.
Sure.
I would, now the next agenda item is talking about the time of transition. Pastor Lyle.
Yes, so that's why I'm here, right? Intentional interim ministry. And we are well into that time. I've been here now less than 6 months, but in that time we have done a lot of talking about what interim means. I've held a couple of adult forums, and I've talked with a lot of individuals who want to be engaged in the conversation about what does intentional interim mean. And they've been good conversations. So this is the first time in many, many years that St. Mark's has technically not had a pastor in place. So many of your transitions in the past have been transitions from an associate or an assistant who have left, and then you're calling another associate or assistant. And so the wisdom of the whole church is that when a lead pastor leaves, it's important to have someone like me, temporary, to come in and shepherd a process that not only reassures you that I'll be here on Sundays and I'll do my best to do what you expect me to do in the course of the week, but primarily I'm here to help shepherd this process. And so it began by listening to you for the first 4 or 5 months, and some of your hopes and dreams for the future, some of your fears and anxieties about the present. And so I've done some listening. But we also put together the next step, which is a transition team. So we have a team in place. That team is meeting regularly now. I'll tell you the team. It's Kimberly Hamilton Lamb, it's Dana Utz, it's Ian O'Leary, it's Matthias Will, it's Phil Krikow, it's Kelly Broen. We have a couple of other folks like Molly Hogan who are with us as an advisory in an advisory capacity. They'll help us do some of the work that we need to do. And we know that our end result is that we're going to have the first draft of the ministry site profile that St. Mark's then will give to the Sierra Pacific Synod and post on the ELCA national website that says, basically, if you're a pastor looking for a congregation, consider St. Mark's. And oh, by the way, this is who we are. And so that's the questions. Who are we? Who are our neighbors? And to what is God calling us? That information and so much more will be gathered, and we'll find a way to fill out this 14-page document, which by the time we finish will be 24 pages, if not more. And in the process, we do want to engage the conversation. We want to open the conversation to the whole congregation and engage the congregation in all of the conversations we have, which will be a little bit looking at our history, looking at the partnerships we have with other ministry sites or organizations that we work with, like the Interfaith Council, like Night Ministry, like the congregations in our neighborhood, in the food pantry, and so on and so forth. So we'll talk about partnerships. We'll talk about whether or not St. Mark's has a strong leadership, right? Do you have strong leadership here? I think you do, but we'll talk a lot more about the leadership that we need, and especially moving forward, and especially the leadership you might need in your next pastor. We'll talk about the qualities that you want to see in your next pastor, which will be an interesting conversation, right? Do you want your next pastor to be digitally, I don't even know the words because I'm not digitally able, electronically able, you know, I'm really challenged in that area. So do you want a pastor that can do everything electronically? Or are you looking for some other gifts? You probably want a good administrator. Most congregations want a good preacher. They don't want a mediocre preacher. Most congregations want people to provide some pastoral care. And so do you want your pastor to provide pastoral care? And those kinds of things. What other gifts and skills do you need for this place? And that's what's all going to come out in the ministry site profile. So we're starting that process. This is, to me, the most fun part of this whole intentional interim ministry. It's engaging in those conversations, taking all the information that we gather, putting it together in this draft version of the ministry site profile. The next step is to identify people to serve on the call committee, and we'll do that and get them to feel comfortable in their role. And then the step after that is to do a lot of praying and that the right person is available at the right time for us, and that we don't have an interim that is too long or too difficult or too awkward for any of us. So, and then I don't know what more to say other than it's happening. All the work that is supposed to be happening now in this interim process is happening. Anytime you want, you have a question about this process or about the outcome of this process, really feel free to shoot me an email or give me a phone call. I'm happy to talk to you about it. That's why I'm here. And thanks to the transition team for their work.
Thank you, Pastor Lyle. Are there any questions? Okay, Elise Simonian, you have an announcement about an upcoming adult forum. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeremy. Hello, I'm Elise Simonian, chair of the Racial Equity Team. The Racial Equity Team is inviting everyone to a special adult forum on February 6th at 10 a.m. on Zoom. The ELCA has published a declaration to American Indian and Alaska Native people in which the church confesses its sins towards Indigenous peoples and lists the commitments it will begin working towards. And the declaration states, we commit to begin the practice of land acknowledgements at all expressions of the church. The land beneath St. Mark's Square and the surrounding area are the traditional lands of the Ramaytush Ohlone people. And we're inviting you to join us for this first step in crafting a congregational land acknowledgement. We'll be joined by Dr. Jonathan Cordero, founder and executive director of the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, affiliated scholar at UC Hastings College of the Law and visiting scholar at USC. Dr. Cordero will tell us the story of the land on which we live and worship, discussing the cultural importance of land to the Ramaytush Ohlone. And we hope that you will join us again on February 6th. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. As we did last year, I'd like to give some space if anybody has any questions about what is currently happening, our COVID response. This is your opportunity to raise your hand. And I'm very aware that there's a game starting here. So with that, I will, yes, Tim and Elaine.
Sorry, Pastor Lyle, thank you. And thank you, everybody. It's been a really good meeting and I'll try to keep this short. My questions were about the call committee, and Pastor Lyle, you really did address that, but I guess we're a long way from getting a call committee together. Is that right?
It will be a few months yet. It's hard to know exactly when the transition team will finish. We think we would be able to have everything we need to finish the first draft of the ministry site profile by the middle of June or July. So that would indicate that we could easily have a call committee in place in September. But I'm asking that nobody hold us to that. But that could conceivably be then the next step. They could begin as early as September. They could be interviewing yet in 2022. And you could have a pastor conceivably by Christmas.
Conceivably.
Conceivably. However, if it doesn't work out that way, by the grace of God, I'll walk with you a little longer. How's
Okay.
that?
That's reassuring. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Elaine, for the question. Any other questions, please? Yes, Jim or Renata.
Does that mean, Pastor Lyle, that we will never see you again after you stop being interim pastor, as has happened with so many other pastors in the past?
You know, I'm in an interesting situation in that I am already a member of St. Mark's, and the Synod office knew that when they asked me to consider coming here, and we talked about it, and they had no trouble with that. So you probably will see me, but you will probably not see me as often as you do now. And I will promise the next pastor that I will do nothing to interfere. And as per usual, then I won't come back for weddings. I won't come back for baptisms and all the other things that the next pastor will be responsible for. But you'll see me at an annual meeting here and there. You'll see me at worship periodically. But you never know what my next step is either. Maybe I'll go on to another interim, and then you won't see me that often. But But I will be aware of the fact that I am not to interfere in anything moving forward with the new pastor. And so I'll be not only aware, but I will respect that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I will call for a motion to adjourn the meeting, and please announce yourself, whoever makes the motion.
Marge Oakley, motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Marge. Second and announce. I'm sorry, I was talking over you. Who's second?
Ed, second.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion around adjournment? Hearing none, we will do this. Everybody unmute. This is really fun. We're going to do this one by vote, by voice. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Yay. All opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Okay, I hereby, I'm sorry, Suzanne? Okay, I hereby declare the meeting adjourned. Pastor Lyle, would you like to close us with prayer, please?
I would. Gracious God, today our congregation gathered in prayer with hope to continue on for another year of ministry. We bring with us the memory of a year like no other, even as we move into a future that we cannot yet imagine. Yet even now, as in every age, we know that you are our refuge and strength. In times of plenty and want, in times of conflict and peace, in times of growing and pruning, we remember that you have called us for such a time as this. We celebrate this moment when we can gather together, and we remember the many ways that God has held us together as a community. We give thanks for the gift of our buildings and the welcome and sanctuary it provides, even as we bless God for the marvel of technology and the new bonds of connection that is made possible. When our bodies need sanctuary, when our minds need expanding, when your grace must transcend our limitations, we remember that you have called us for such a time as this. And so we pray for grace as we move forward, for your presence in our lives, for the gift of your Holy Spirit who has guided the church from the beginning, the Spirit of our risen Lord Jesus, the Spirit who sends us as healers and restorers of your beloved world. You are the source of our life together. You are our rock and cornerstone, and you have called us to be your community in faith for such a time as this. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Lyle. Thank you, everybody, for your time and attention. It's been a great meeting.
Thank you, Jeremy.
You're welcome. And Corey, if you could stay on, we'll just have a little debrief after folks drop off.
Thank you,
Thank
Jeremy.
you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Corey.
Welcome, everyone.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.